9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
911, what are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, the whole nine, this isn't a man.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it, that was in midair going across the road in front of me.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail. And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right up the side of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact.
And good evening, cyberspace. Welcome to Squatch-D TV for today's date, March 29th, 2020. I'm your host, your guide, the Squatch Detective, Steve Kulls, along with a guy below me, Mr. Chris Bennett. Hello, Chris.
Hey, Steve, man, it's good to see you still breathing in and out. How's everything going for you in New York?
Well, I've stocked up on Corona and limes, just in case you want to have a Corona with lime.
Well, I saw y'all had plenty of the Corona. I just didn't know if you had the lime together or not, but it's good to know something's going right for you.
So, yeah, it's been weird. And hello to our guest tonight, way down below. Yep, go ahead. Pass it forward, Chris. Mr. Ben Radford. Hey, Ben, good to see you tonight, brother. How are you?
I'm doing great, doing great. I'm all stocked up on Corona, too, so we're all good here.
You know, what a crazy world we live in. And as here comes the crew in, Barry. Hello, Barry.
Hey, Barry.
Hello, B.
B.
Hi, Cookie. What's going on, B? Again.
Cookie.
Dave Drag. How are you, brother?
Big Dave.
Walt is here, and Little Walt is in the house as well tonight.
Walt, and Little Walt.
And Mr. Charlie Wonton himself, Jimmy Trick. Hello,
Jimmy.
Guys. So here we are tonight on the precipice of another, at least in New York State, we're shut down until April 15th. So I'll take it. I'll take it. I'm getting paid. What do I care? Is what it is. Does it suck that I can't go out and do some of the things I like to do? Well, is what it is.
Well, there are good things that come out of this, Steve. I mean, like personally right now, I am bettering myself because I'm not smoking right now. And you'll notice I won't be smoking during the show tonight because I don't have any cigarettes. And it's not that, they don't make cigarettes anymore. It's just I'm afraid to go out and get them.
I go for the silver lining, man. I like that, Chris. That's good.
Well, here's the thing. Now here's the kick about this, Ben. You're going to get a kick out of this. So Chris had a little heart issue a couple of years back. Really gave us a big scare, right? So he smokes, but he's afraid to go out because of coronavirus. So I asked him today in pre-show, well, how many cases do you have in the county, Chris? None. Just go to hell out, man.
None that you know of. Asymptomatic, man. You can't. Better safe than sorry.
Somebody has got to be the first guy. Okay, I don't want to be that guy.
Cheers to you, man.
You don't want to be patient zero, but you can go to the store quickly. That's what I do. Yeah. I have a store a couple of miles down the house, get provisions for the day, and then once a week, twice a week, we head out to either a grocery store or department store to stock up on the rest of the provisions. And that's when I go home and I get in the, I get in the little room and this big light comes across.
Yeah.
and I'm decontaminated and I walk into my house. So,
well, you know, things have been changing a lot lately. Now, for us, because, well, you know, I'm one of those guys that are in the high risk factor. You know, if I get it, more likely I probably won't come out of it. But we have changed the way we live, and we've actually started ordering food online and, you know, from Amazon stuff. So we have boxes on the front porch. We don't go out, but we have boxes on the front porch.
The door opens slightly and a pole comes out and it snatches the bag into the house.
No, we peep through the blinds, and when the UPS guy leaves or FedEx guy leaves, we go outside armed with a can of disinfectant, because my wife is certain that it lives in cardboard. The coronavirus would live in cardboard longer than it would in you know, any other surface.
You're better off running into a brown recluse.
Yes, we spray the boxes down with disinfectant, and then we bring them in the house, open it up, take the stuff out, and spray that stuff down with disinfectant.
So everything you eat tastes like Lysol, is that right?
Yeah, it's got a little
great,
flavor to it.
That nice little, you know, the beautiful thing is I've stocked up on chicken and fish, so you know I have some nice Lysol lemon and pepper fish and Lysol lemon and pepper chicken, and B says, glad you stopped smoking or trying.
Thank you, B.
And I don't know if this was directed for you specifically, Chris, but Walt says some stores have hours for seniors only.
Well, I am almost there. I'm almost there, you know, but haven't quite breached that age group. I've surpassed 50, but I haven't got into my 60s yet. Now, once I get there, I'll be able to get in those special store time hours that, you know, I think I deserve anyway right now. But that's okay, you know. I'll get through this.
Well, here's the funny thing I've noticed about tonight. All three of us are around the same age.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All three of us are sporting these great haircuts.
Oh yeah. Mm.
So we're all good. This is awesome. Instead of
dude, we are saving the world one bottle of shampoo at a time.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Give us a hand there. But anyway, very, very interesting week in squatching. Obviously, I've had a lot more time to dedicate to this than I've had in the past. And a story came out, and I mentioned it briefly last week on the show about the Bigfoot Peeper, or the peeping Bigfoot. And you know, it's really tough when you get and this is how it first came out. It just came out with the pictures, as a lot of these things usually do, right? I mean, anytime any one of you guys want to jump in, just jump in. Don't be afraid. A lot of times these pictures come in with no explanation at all. So, or very little explanation. So when the gentleman, and his name was Scott Yeoman, allegedly, came out with this, some people had kind of taken a little bit of a story and it kind of got it wrong. He got kind of upset, and then he put out this story. And last week we actually read the story on the show of that, and some of the initial concerns I had about the story. You know, concerns like, why would you wait, 8 minutes, and then that's kind of an odd number too. It's like, but then again, I got thinking about it too. And this is how we need to process problems, is process them objectively. My job here is not to debunk. My job is to either verify or debunk. That's our purpose here. Can we verify details or can we debunk? So, like I said to some people say, well, your job as an investigator is to basically prosecute people for crimes. No, my job as an investigator, first step is to see if a crime has been committed. That's the first step.
Yeah, I mean, that's always the first thing, is right. I mean, there's in skepticism, we have this thing that's sometimes called Hyman's categorical imperative, and it's named after a psychologist named Ray Hyman. And basically, the idea is, before trying to explain why something happened or how something happened, make sure that it happened. So, right. So if you're given a video or a photograph or a story of whatever else, before spending, hours, days, months, weeks, whatever it is, investigating it, be sure that there's something to investigate, so you're not just going off on a wild Bigfoot chase.
Yeah, I'll be like the rest of us tonight. For some reason, I have this old cloth I have for a green screen, and it's got little divots in it. So for every once in a while, I get these sparkles on black, and I'm not quite sure why, but we'll get that tweaked out. But you're absolutely right, Ben, and that's what I've constantly said. A video, picture, audio, whatever, it's only as. And hang on a second, we got to say hello to Spear W from our Twitter feed. Hello,
Hey there.
So everybody is checked in: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. So that's awesome. But yeah,
Nani?
Nani's here. Yep, Nani is here. Nani in the house. So what I've always said is any piece of evidence, photo, audio, whatever, it's only as good as the story behind it. If you have a crap story, you have crap evidence. And and we'll get more into this, Ben. And I know we talked earlier about you may have an idea for a motive. I do too. And it took me, after I did the initial post, I had to go back to my criminal psychology mind. I think, well, why would somebody do that? Would it be for some nefarious reason, or would it be for some other? So we'll get into that now. I put together a little PowerPoint presentation for us tonight. So we'll get to that. Oops. And I know from the beginning.
Don't look, everybody. Don't look. Don't look. No spoilers. No spoilers. Close your eyes.
From the beginning, from current slide. Okay, something is not working.
There we go.
So it's kind of different because I'm running this. The way the studio set up is I actually have 3 screens. I have a file screen, main screen, and then the share screen, which is what you're all looking at. So let's get into this. Of course, the peeping Bigfoot, and that went to nothing. Okay, hang on a second. We're gonna just let me try to see what I can do about getting this fixed, because sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. Let's just do that. Get rid of that. Okay, there we go. Okay, now we'll go. Now we should be all right. There we are. So anyway, and that's strange. It's kind of a quirk of Windows. For whatever reason, when I get off that initial screen, I have to restart the actual presentation. So here we go. So anyway, again, we talked about these series of 8 pictures that had come out in the beginning of March by a man by the name of Scott Yeoman. And he posted it in a couple of Facebook groups. Did not post it on his own page until February 20th. And as you can see, there are the pictures. And it caused quite a stir. The real thing is he states that this is actually a video, and that these are screenshots of, in actuality, screenshots of a computer screen. And in looking at the pictures, especially the ones down here, I do a lot of photography, taking phone pictures of CCTV screens to pass on to other investigators. Hey, we got, this crew hitting us, or that crew, or that. Be on the lookout for this person when I do bolos. So that is very common. So I see no lie there. This is actually, to me, it looks like a phone picture of a computer screen. So now, of course,
the question raises as to why we're only seeing a series of photos. If you got the video, why not post the video? But
right,
maybe I'm the token skeptic. Whatever. I'm just saying.
Well, we're all the token skeptic on this one. So anyway, yeah, and the original video conveniently was lost in a fire.
Fire.
Oh yeah,
very old school. I like that.
Yeah,
it's not a corrupted hard drive. It was lost in a fire.
This
is 1850 or something. Okay.
Now I can understand a corrupted hard drive. I've had lots of files over 20 years of doing this that I'm like, oh shit, I never backed that up. That happens. I can understand. Okay, well, that makes more sense. But it's got to be, and usually we find this when people who hoax, they go to an extreme. Well, it was lost in a fire. Well, the interesting thing is, we'll get into it. No sense in spoiling. So on March 20th, he finally posts the pictures on his own page. And he said, Bigfoot I took in 2017. Now, here's the interesting thing about that whole statement, too, that I also find here's my pictures of the Bigfoot I took in 2017. Now, there he kind of doesn't put in the fact that it's pictures of a video. He just puts pictures. So I find that kind of interesting too. And people
Yeah.
they don't understand these semantics when you're a forensic interviewer are very telling. It's a tell. And to me, it's like, no, he says these are pictures. My guess is that the video showed obvious flaws, and that's why this was actually shot the way it was, and never. And the other interesting thing, it's never from the nose. It's only the nose up. So it's almost like there may have been a flaw with, that mouth may not pass, inspection or muster. So I'm going to do it from the nose down, because now he claims that the window ledge is 8 foot up. And, if you look at the lighting in the background, that's kind of, to me, it looks like a standard window looking into somebody's backyard.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first thing that comes to mind when I look at these things. So my guess is the whoever it is crouching down in front of the window, doing this. So again, and on March 14th, previous, when somebody had made a post about the pictures, he got mad saying, dude, you're twisting my story. And if you're going to tell it, if you're gonna do this shit, do it right. And then he lists his story there that we saw. Real, eloquent man.
It is not a bear.
Well, no, I agree. It's not a bear.
No, I'm just reading it again with all the LOLs and the exclamation. It's remarkable prose. I'll give it that.
Yeah. It is. It's somebody that may be very embedded into the story. So, in Yeoman's account, these are the facts as they are followed. The subject posted a lengthy account claiming the following: purchased 11 acres of land with his wife in Bailey, Colorado, which is in Park County. In August of 2017, 8/24/17 to be exact, the encounter allegedly occurred. He claimed to have used this is his words now, a cheap Kodak Sport digital camera, which conveniently was on the end table next to his recliner. After 8 minutes of videoing, his wife enters the room and sees the creature. In panic, flees the room. And it's funny how he says that, because then she had a slew of questions. Well, if she fled the room, why is she asking questions? You should either ask questions and then fled her. So I see that little blurb in that storyline too.
Well, also let me just point out that the narrative so far is that he's the brave one, right? He's the one like I'm gonna capture this important evidence. It's when the woman comes in, she freaks and runs terrified, looking for a fainting couch.
Right, exactly. Dude. Yep. And by the way, Nani says, just so folks know, Nani says that my dog ate it. That would be a good excuse for not having your Bigfoot video. Or Walt, of course, Walt. And now see, there's a little thing, a Pennsylvania Bigfoot camping adventure. Walt was one of the men in black out there. He came in one of the days dressed in a Men in Black suit with his son dressed in a Men in Black suit. It was kind of funny because they had the big Bigfoot in the costume, and the two Men in Black grabbed the Bigfoot and walked off with him. It was kind of actually quite comical. But he said the Men in Black are trying to hack Steve's computer, why it works sporadically. Yes, thanks, Walt. It's operator error. I can guarantee that. So the next part of this fact of the story is, at that point, he finally stops videotaping and grabs his .40 caliber. Wife allegedly calls the sheriff's department. Photos and pictures of the video photos are pictures of the video he shot, and the original video was destroyed in a fire at his mother's house.
After his dog ate it. The dog ate it, and then the dog exploded with spontaneous canine combustion, and then the whole thing went to shit. So,
and guess what? We just lost the controller again because I. Okay, let's try. Okay. Okay, there we go from current slide. There we are. Oh, and we lost it again. So let's get back to where we were. And it's not doing it again. What the heck? I've never had a problem with Microsoft PowerPoint until... there we go. So problems with the claim I have automatically are why number one, why wait almost 3 years to state anything to anyone?
Right.
Now I can understand, and people have said, well, just because he waited all this time, and I'm, my own devil's advocate, what makes you think, maybe, there's a lot of people that come out of the closet about Bigfoot after years anyway. But usually those are the people that don't have evidence. You know, the people that have the video or the photos, or even the audio. Here we are. Look what I got. Look what I got.
Yeah, well, because the argument is that they're afraid to come forward because they're not going to be believed because they don't have any evidence. But if you shot eight minutes of video evidence, then you got no reason not to come forward, because if anybody questions you, it's like, here you go, dude.
Yep, exactly. So to me, that argument doesn't make sense. If you have evidence, why aren't you coming forward right away? I can understand saying, well, you know, after, you know, well, about 10 years ago, me and my dad had an experience. I can understand that because it's something they hid for a while, and they get into an atmosphere where they feel comfortable to tell their story. Why do like this wild statistic to rapes across the country don't get reported? You know, it happens. So I understand that, but if you have evidence, why not just put it out there? Conveniently has a charged camera next to him. I mean, I have cameras all over my house, all ready for the go, and I live in a rural area, so, and I don't have a camera anywhere. If I need a camera, I have to run to the office, and oh shit, I need batteries, or
but I see like 8 computer screens right behind you, so clearly there's cameras somewhere.
Well, that's the green screen, man.
I know. You fooled me with the video. Come on, Steve.
That's the foul Squatch Detective Headquarters. People have seen the Squatch Detective Headquarters in previous shows. I just thought this was kind of a neat format. And eventually, who knows, I may put Patterson 352 behind me. So one day I'll be there and Patty will be walking behind me and we can have a little fun with that. Or maybe a UFO. I'm wondering if I could put video on this. That'd be kind of annoying after a while. See the same thing going on behind me. But, why didn't he call his wife immediately? And this, to me, psychologically, is one of the biggest things. I made a statement a couple of months ago that if there is a video of a person seeing a Bigfoot for the first time and they have a child with them and they're like, oh, look at the Bigfoot, come on, let's go follow him. Oh, look at this. That's not a typical reaction of somebody seeing a Bigfoot or a wild animal in the wild that is huge, because your first thing is, I got to protect this child. I don't care about video. I don't care about anything. Now, Chris Bennett had a video years back ago, and it was only like 40 seconds long, and you can even hear him say, well, I think we better get out of here. That's the normal psychological process on that. And even Chris said in his story that my concern was for Scott's son, and that made sense. Right. That to me shows sincerity in regardless if you think he's seen a Bigfoot or not. It shows that the event actually occurred. But whereas this one, it's just like, hell, if the wife goes out there and it grabs her, I'm good to go. You have that kind of, is it that kind of mentality? I don't know, because the first thing I'd be like, honey, there's something at the window here. Just stay inside.
Don't go out.
Don't go out.
Right.
Or better yet, or if you're staying at home with your mother-in-law, hey mom, do you want to go out front and grab the mail?
Somebody's asking for you. I'm not sure who it is. Tall, dark stranger.
Or me, like I said last week, I just holler at the wife, hey, honey, I dropped my billfold out of the bedroom window here. Could you go pick it up? I think there's about $900 in it. I'm not sure.
So I can't put the names up on the screen, but Matt Rudy's in the house. Hello, Matt. And hello, Mark Decker from Texas. Hello. So everybody's coming in tonight.
Right.
I have no idea what the live count is tonight because it's not working. But I do know it's working because people are commenting. So I know
we see you guys. Glad to everybody's in here. Glad to see y'all.
And of course, the big point I have, conveniently, the original video was destroyed in a fire. Now, why didn't he state where the fire was located? For that matter, why didn't he specifically state that of the sheriff's department? Maybe he didn't know in the heat of writing this, because as we will find out, Bailey, Colorado, which is in Park County, is not the county where Mr. Yeoman lives in. So. So anyway, again, going on with problems of the claim, and this is something I look at very, very often when I look. You look at the detailed portions, which in a hoax statement, and I always go back to the Susan Smith case, which was a classic example. And Susan Smith, a bunch of years ago, claimed she was carjacked by an African-American male that took off in the car with her 2 children. And as it turned out, it was her that did it, and she put the car in the lake with her 2 children still strapped in the back. Very tragic, very sad story. But when they first talked to her, again, she was very detailed about a lot of things, but very vague about others. And the vagueness always comes to the verifiable stuff. For example, detailed. In August of 2017, we were finishing the interior of the back of the house, and I came out into the living room and caught a whiff of a very harsh odor in the room. It smelled like rotting animal flesh, vomit, and excrement. I caught a glimpse of something moving outside the window from the corner of my eye. I took a lot of wildlife pictures because they literally come up to the outside of it like mule deer, elk, bear. Haven't seen any mountain lion or other small game. I have quite a few of feral cats all over my property, but they aren't mine. And I find that interesting because he claims he lives remotely. So if he has all these feral cats, he makes that comment, they aren't ours. Well, who are they? Who do they belong to?
Them city slickers are bringing their feral cats to my property and then taking them back the next day. The hell?
That's right. They're gonna make me feed them. Again, that is the twist with somebody who is lying because they can't keep their story straight. He's saying he lives in a rural area. He says all this, and then he says he has a bunch of feral cats all right, but they aren't mine. Who would they be? Why not just leave it at I have feral cats all over the place?
Well, why add that little extra detail that he thinks is making it credible, but to an experienced investigator like yourself, it's just raising red flag.
Exactly. So shaking and trying to video at the same time, I moved back a step, and it slowly moved from one side of the window to the other. It seriously took a 10-minute. It was seriously about a 10-minute video, but it was on a 1.5 inch card, which is an SD card, and which had to be downloaded on a computer. It didn't make any attempt to enter the house or run away. So again, here's the interesting thing. He says that it's a 10-minute video, but his wife came in at the 8-minute part. So, at which time he drops the camera, stops videotaping. So is it 8 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? One of my friends I talked to, one of my informants, actually said that he had wrote one claim that it was a 20-minute video. So again,
well, come on, Steve. The 10 minutes of it was burned in the fire. The part that he dusted off was fine. I mean,
So about 8 minutes in, my wife came into the room and asked me what I was doing.
Watching porn, honey. What do you want?
Hopefully it's not kiddie porn, and we'll get to that later too. I told her there's something outside and it ain't no bear. When she looked over my shoulder, she screamed, "What is that thing?" I mean, the language in here is that of a sophomoric B-rated film at best. When she looked over my shoulder and she screamed, "What is that thing?" and ran back to the bedroom. I stopped the video, went to the closet. So she was there 2 minutes, or because he says it was a 10-minute video, but at the 8-minute mark, she walks in, and this stuff all takes place what is that thing? And runs out. That's like 10 seconds, not 2 minutes. Ran back to the bedroom. I stopped the video, went to the closet, and grabbed my .40 caliber off the closet shelf. Again, very vague, a .40 caliber.
Oh.
When I turned back around, it was moving away from the window. Oh, miraculously, you grabbed the gun to kill it, even though he says he wasn't going to try to kill it. And it leaves. Oh shit, it's a gun.
When I first read that, I thought he said he was reaching for 40 ounce. That was my take on it, but
that would have made a lot more sense. Yeah. I stopped videotaping. I reached into the kitchen and grabbed the 40 ounce. That would have made more sense. Because right now you sat there and watched it for 10 minutes. Now all of a sudden you're going to grab a gun. It makes no sense psychologically. And psychologically, you're going to warn your wife. You're going to grab your weapon first, and you're not going to worry about the camera. You have something at your window that's huge. He says that it's it stood off. The window still is 8 foot tall. So you have something that's more than 8 foot tall at your window looking in. Yeah. So these are all very detailed things that cannot be verified. They're completely unverifiable, with the exception of maybe having a weapon. But here's the vagueness of parts of the statement. I used a cheap Kodak digital camera for taking pics. For the most part, it takes fast action pictures, video, of course. And I don't know what I did with it. I have one too. But here's the thing. If somebody questions, well, can I see a picture of the camera? He can find a picture of any camera he wants because he was vague about it. As long as it's a Kodak camera, here, I'll take the first one. Here you go. You know, when I got the alleged New York baby video, I got the actual make and model of the camera. I asked for that information. It was given to me. So I don't think there was anything, you know, the difference between now, whether or not it's a Bigfoot or not, doesn't matter. It's whether or not it's authentic or not. And that's why you have to gear your analysis. You know, when I got the baby video, it was like, well, here's the camera I used. He was very forthcoming with all the information I asked and very specific. Yeah. When you have those little fine details that are detailed as the bullshit, and you have the equipment and the minutia, then you're onto something, right? I stopped the video, went to the closet and grabbed my 40 caliber off the closet shelf. Well, now we can say, well, here's a picture of my 40 caliber gun, and he can pick anyone. Doesn't matter. Most people I know that say, well, when I went to the closet, I got out my SIG 40 cal or my SIG, or I got my Glock, or I got my Smith and Wesson. They don't call it by the caliber normally. You know, I got my Remington 2020. You know, they stuff like that, or my Remington 3030. They have, those are the type of descriptions you have when somebody owns a gun.
Yeah.
You know, the only exception to that of being a shotgun. I'll grab my shotgun. That's the only exception to that. But you don't usually call off a caliber without, you know, giving the manufacturer usually.
Well, you see, one of the things I love about the work that you do and your work on this case in particular is you're bringing all sorts of different angles into it, right? You're bringing in, basically you're doing a version of literary analysis, literary detective work. Which is absolutely is ironclad? No, I mean, people sometimes say things, but it's points that point in one direction or another. It's data points, and you know, I love how you broke this down. It's really interesting.
And the other thing is that the way I do my investigative process is in steps. So if the story looks suspicious, now we go into the confirmation, and that'll be the next thing is we do what we can to confirm stuff. And the long story short about my mother's house burnt down on a fire we had out here last year. Well, where is out here? You know, again, very vague. She called the sheriff's department and sent 3 deputies to check out the property. The property, vague. The sheriff's department. What sheriff's department? You know, usually when you get somebody, well, I called, you know, the Saratoga County Sheriff's Department. I called the Rensselaer County Sheriff's Department. Very, very specific. Well, you know, my mom lived over here. She had a fire out in such and such Colorado. All of that information is missing. Why? Because it can be made up at a later time if it needs to be. You can find an article on a fire anywhere and say, well, this was my mom's house. You know, so it's done very smoothly to, and this as an investigator, talking to people who steal things for a living for the most part and commit other crimes. These are the kind of things that, you know, I ask questions and I let them tell their story and they get a very detailed story. Then I start asking them more bullet points. And when they start to get vague, my bullshit meter goes off. And then I always say, keep this in mind. Anyway, the rest of the night was uneventful and peaceful other than panicking my wife. She ended up having my daughter and her husband get her and took her to Golden for a couple of days. Golden, Colorado is going to be a very important point in this presentation so far. So the investigative process, these are some of the things that I wanted to get done. And again, confirm residency and properly submit a FOIL request to the Sheriff's Department. My first inkling was I need to find out where he lives to do a proper FOIL request to the Sheriff's Department. If I find out he lives at, you know, 123 Main Street, Bailey, Colorado, okay. Then when I submit my FOIL to the Park County Sheriff's Office, because I already figured out really quick that it was the Park County Sheriff's Department if he lived in Bailey, Colorado, that, you know, hey, I need any details of an incident that happened on or about August 24th, 2017 at 123 Main Street, Bailey, Colorado, involving, you know, one Scott Yeoman. Ascertain mother's address to properly foil the fire department report of fire. Scrub Scott Yeoman's Facebook for Bigfoot-related posts. See if there's any other history of Bigfoot-related stuff. Scrub Yeoman on Google for Bigfoot-related posts. See if he'd been sniffing around the Bigfoot community before these pictures miraculously came out. See if there was anything interesting that was said. Image search the submitted pictures to obtain if they're from any other source but Scott Yeoman. Validate the weather information in Bailey. I spelled Bailey wrong there. Bailey, Colorado for August 24th, 2017. Verify on Park County, Colorado Clerk's Office's property exists in Scott Yeoman's name and photo analysis. So that was my investigative process going forward. So as we go on, we do an address search, and there is a Scott Yeoman in Bailey, Colorado. Actually, he doesn't live. When I did the search, Scott Yeoman, Bailey, Colorado, it only yielded one result. He does not live in Bailey. He lives in a town outside of Bailey, about 8 miles away. And he is a bank vice president. This was clearly not the Scott Yeoman we were looking for. And actually, his house is probably like a $375,000 or $500,000 house. So, in these very suburban neighborhoods. So, it did not necessarily fit.
Yeah.
Fit the profile of Mr. Bailey. And of course the big thing is the picture. That's not who it is. So I decided also to Google the Park County assessors, and we did get a hit on the name Yeoman, but it came back to a Donald J. and Vekla Yeoman. And the only property a Yeoman owns in Park County is only 5.09 acres, not 11 as stated. It is in Hartselle, Colorado, which is 58 miles from Bailey, Colorado. It's not even close to Bailey, Colorado. Has its own zip code. And if you look at the site characteristics, it's 5.09 acres, dedicated county and state, several buildings, topography is several building sites, cover minimal. So there's no cover at all. There's no trees. There's very little stuff. View is good. Live water, none. Well, none. Sewer, none. Electricity, none. Building count, 0. It is an empty lot.
It's in the boonies, man. There's nothing there.
Right. So any Yeoman who owns any property in Park County, it's an empty lot. So the story of sitting at a recliner, the story of watching television or whatever, or even being able to charge anything, not necessarily going to be true. There's no living room. There's no bedroom. There's none of that. So, at least at this site. So we do a social media scrub, and then I noticed that Scott Yeoman's face. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Scott Yeoman, as I went back, yielded this guy. Didn't yield anybody else. So I started scrubbing Scott Yeoman's Facebook account and saw that he had several ties to Kokomo, Indiana, and apparently having a relationship with somebody there in 2018 through late 2018. And gave me some suspicion. And, these are the pictures that were found on both his and her Facebook pages of them together. So there's our cat. We know that because, we've seen the Scott Yeoman profile. So I did an address search, and this is what it came out to be. He actually lives in Golden, Colorado. So bingo. And this is what I actually see. I blacked out. I redacted the actual addresses, other than just keeping the times and the counties and cities he's lived in. So he actually lived in Golden, Colorado. That's where he lives. March 2020. That's the end date on that. Kokomo
from 2006, looks like.
Right. So at some point in time,
so it's not like he just recently moved there.
Gotcha. Yeah. And it could be the fact that he may have a relative living in the same house, and he could be going back there and using that as a mail drop. The same thing with Kokomo, Indiana. Because we see this movement on his social networking that, like in 2018, we go back to this. He seemed to be in Kokomo for quite a while. This is 2018. But now we know he's back in from this. He's pretty much back in Golden, Colorado, which doesn't surprise me. Greeley, Colorado, actually, we'll get into that. Notice that's in Weld County. And so here's where it's very interesting. So we have Kokomo, Indiana. So what I actually did was I ran a search on the name Yeoman. And up came the name Jonathan Scott Yeoman. So I'm going, what if he's using it? Because I know Scott Yeoman doesn't exist. The one we're looking for. This guy with the name of Scott Yeoman does not exist. So it comes to me now, mind you, this isn't my first rodeo. I've done this 100 times. I'm a private investigator. So I skip trace people. So very common to me. He's probably using his middle name or a variant of his name, you know. So we run Yeoman, just the name Yeoman. We come across the Jonathan Scott Yeoman, which provides me some detailed information that the general public is not allowed to have. But in the process of being a licensed private investigator, I'm allowed to have it. So I ran those numbers, and we come up with this address list. And we also come up that the gentleman was arrested in 1992 for child molestation. And at that time, it provides a mugshot. And the photos on the right are of his Facebook accounts. And notice I said plural accounts. And we see that it is definitely
that's him.
We know as Scott Yeoman. And if you look, the first picture in is very close to his arrest. You can see the paleness around the eyes compared to the rest of the face, which is what you have here. He has a little strip there going, a little strip going there. There's a little more light to the picture there. There's another picture on one of his Facebook pages that proves that he has the same hairline.
It's clearly him, yeah.
It's clear. I mean, it's clearly him. No doubt about it. Now, because I was looking at some of the pictures, and like the selfie pictures, they're actually inverted, I'm pretty sure. And that's why, like you see this, he's got a snaggle tooth. And I think it's on the opposite side of his face in a couple of pictures. I think because he's taking the selfie.
Mm-hmm.
So we have that. So we know what he's done. And he's a convicted sex offender. 1992, served 6 years. 6 years, just under 6 years in prison. He served 2.5 years, probably spent the rest of it on parole. The interesting thing there is that this means his whole thing about his gun is baloney, because in the state of Colorado, a felon cannot possess a firearm crossbow for any reason, hunting, anything. You can't.
Well, either it's baloney or he's violated the law.
Right. And if he's violating, and like I said, there is an argument on that. Well, what if he's violating the law? You know, like we haven't heard of a felon having a gun before, but they don't put it on blast on the internet. And the only reason why they put it on blast on the internet, because if the police come and go to say, hey, listen, we got a report that you have a gun. Well, go ahead, search my house, because he doesn't have one. He's not worried about it.
Right.
You know, he's not a violent offender. He's a sexual offender, not a violent offender. Then we also, doing some Google searching on his name, came across this, and here's even more interesting, is that this is pretty interesting, especially the article by the Denver Post, which is the one that has right here, and it says Westminster Mall was shut down on the Santa Claus display because basically Jonathan Scott Yeoman was hired as an elf. Now that's scary in of its own. A child molester hired.
Wow,
that is really, really scary.
Yeah.
And it says it does not appear that that Yeoman, who lives in Golden, again another reference to Golden, Colorado.
Not really.
Is in violation. It's not sure if he's in violation of Colorado sex offender status. As it turns out, he wasn't in violation because he didn't get charged for it. In 2008, he did get a harassment charge out of Jefferson County, Colorado, which, hey, guess what? That's where this offense took place too, and that's where Golden, Colorado resides, is in Jefferson County. And as we can see by his residence record, he lives in Golden, Colorado, Jefferson County. Yeah. So this information is all matching up very nicely. Now comes to the subject of his wife. And this was the only mistake in the process, is that I thought his wife had passed away. He did end up remarrying. We did find her obituary. His name is there. And notice his name is there. The zero is off. In this, he's actually used, he's named Scott Yeoman. So they dropped his name in her obituary that time. Now, that's not uncommon for a sex offender to drop his first name, because he doesn't want people to continue on with his life, keep pulling up the fact that he's a sex offender. He's trying to circumvent that fact. No, I can't be Jonathan Yeoman. I have to be Scott Yeoman, because Jonathan Yeoman's a convicted sex offender.
Yeah.
Right. So we did find that, okay. So, and of course, on the far right is a picture he had on Facebook of his back window of his car at one time. you know, in the memory of my wife, Angela A. Yeoman, blah, 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 blah. So we come to this next slide. And this is where we discovered that he has 2 other Facebook accounts. He has a Jonathan Yeoman account here and a Jonathan Yeoman account here, and he's a Scott Yeoman account. And none of which show any house in Colorado. So some property or some national park shots, but nothing. You know, he says he's building a house in Colorado in 2017. There's no pictures of him doing that. We found out that, yes, he was remarried at the time, so he did have a wife. However, they separated, it looks like, in 2018, because there's a lot of posts on his thing about on his Facebook page about, you know, relationship stuff and relationship problems around 2018. And then all of a sudden he appears in Kokomo with another woman. So we know him and his wife had split in 2018. Still puts the ex-wife in that predicament of being there at the time in 2017. But we've already proven that he couldn't have lived at the house, because what I did is a background check of her address history as well. And the funny thing is, this is where they lived during the relationship, right here. June 2011, LaSalle, Colorado, which is in Weld County, even further away from Valley. And this is actually where they live. This is the actual house that the address was listed. This is a coffee kiosk right here. This is a very busy business community. See, there's a tractor trailer. This is where he was staying with his wife at the time in 2017. Does not look like at all possible that a Bigfoot is going to go down in downtown Metropolis and start peeking through a window. Maybe a burglar.
There's a tree, you know.
But the funny thing is that none of that really will match up very nicely with where he lives currently, because it was my assertion that, you know what, these pictures weren't in 2017. He took them now. I'm starting to build this. These are more recent. This isn't an old item. This is new. That's why it's coming out now. He's just throwing it back there. Now, the funny thing is in something that I find really interesting is that in all of his accounts, he always says, my wife, my wife, my wife. Not his ex-wife, his wife. Find that a little interesting too. Like he's making a story. He's just creating this character behind himself. Well, you know, my wife and I, you know, my wife saw this. Hey, listen, I've been down that rodeo a couple of times, and I don't call my ex-wife my wife.
Well, of course, from his point of view, it probably, again, made it in his own mind. That probably in his mind made it seem more plausible, right? Because otherwise, you're like, well, my ex-wife came in. Hold it. Why did your ex-wife come in 8 minutes into fix? So he's like, well, I'll just call it my wife. But then he's got to keep it up, right? He's got to keep the story going.
Or say my wife at the time,
right?
Yeah.
My wife at the time, or my now ex-wife, or even my ex-wife came in. Why was your ex-wife staying there? Well, that's easy. She was my wife at the time. That's an easy enough explanation. So when he did get divorced, it's kind of funny that the court used his work address in Kokomo, Colorado for all the papers, the service of papers. So my guess is he's friends with the business there, and he was living in Colorado when the divorce went down.
Or Indiana.
No, this is 2019. In 2018, he was hanging out a lot in Indiana with the other guy.
Okay.
So, and it's just kind of stupid that we really have to go to this length, but what we need to do is we need to paint a picture of this guy, where his movements were, to see if we can confirm that is intelligence. That is what a skip tracer does. That is what an investigator does. We take all this statistical data and we mold it into a working model. And this is what's going on, where we got a working model. Here's a guy who's jumped between a couple of states. And there's other stuff too. There's stuff with civil courts, and and we'll allude to that in a little bit. So the interesting thing is, during this whole month-long process we've been going through, a couple of confidential sources have told me that he has been pushing, trying to resist being on podcasts and stuff. And some of the stuff he's saying is, plus my wife is not amused by any of this. And my wife has health issues, not my ex-wife, my wife. So even in these conversations this month alone, as far back as a week ago, he was saying he had a wife. You know, so this is nothing but a painted story behind him, getting very clearly. Now let's take a look at the photos, which I found very interesting. Is that I found some light source in there, and to me, they look like patio doors or French doors, or maybe it's looking into somebody's patio, because it doesn't look like a standard window. You know, there's kind of some different colors in them. You know, a little shading, maybe some background. And if I pull up his residence now, which is these are the overhead shots of what lists as his current residence. We take even a further look that this is going to be nowhere a Bigfoot's going to roam anytime soon. So here's what we've come up with, is that if you use the back window and if he shoots this, the line of sight with the camera, with the creature would be hanging out in here somewhere. You know, the creature, the guy in the mask would be hanging out by here.
The alleged creature.
Yeah, the alleged creature. The light source would be this patio here. He's shooting through the trees. And if you look at those pictures very clearly, there is a part where he moves to, like, with this side of the window, and it appears that the light is kind of blocked out somehow. So my guess is that he's shooting a video somewhere in here, and he's shooting across. You know, the background light, what you're seeing is what's back here. And it makes perfect sense, you know, all in all, because I think that there would be no light source here at all, no light source here at all.
It's not going to be in the front because everybody would see it.
Exactly. So I think it's the most likely area to do this. And he's got a little bit of privacy because there's some trees here and there's some trees here. So he's got some privacy to put somebody out the back door, go over here and monkey in front, and literally monkey in front of the window.
Zing.
And you know, do this.
Well,
so this makes all the sense in the world to me. How
that's it. I mean, you've got, that would be a straight line of sight for a possible light source, if that's what we're seeing in the pictures,
right?
And I'd say, yeah.
So there's just no way. And with the evidence, the scrubbing evidence, and people, you know, and we'll talk about that when we get off we got one more slide to the presentation here. So based on the background, investigation alone, he never lived or owned property in Bailey, Colorado. He was married at the time, but lived in LaSalle, Colorado, which is in Weld County. Does not refer to his wife as an ex-wife. He stated to people in PMs that he was currently married to avoid interviews. The likelihood of owning a weapon is nil, as a convicted felon in Colorado is not allowed. As a side note, if you're a convicted felon and you owned a gun, why would you put it on blast? And finally, you know, his current residence in Colorado shows a good explanation of how the photos came about with the lights in the background.
Yeah.
So I think in all that kind of kills that whole thing right there. So that is the show. And, you know, so now I'm going to go over to Ben and say, you know, let's talk about motive. And I will add that on part 2 of my series, I added the fact that, do I think this was for any nefarious reason necessarily? And, you know, I look at it, you know, being involved in, you know, law enforcement for so long, and I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I work very closely with them. You know, you have to put yourself in the mind of a person that has been who is a registered sex offender, as hard as that may sound. Well, think about what your prospects are. You know, your prospects are, you know, people are going to ostracize you if they find out. You always have this dirty little secret behind you. You're always looking behind your back because of it. You get a job as an elf and you get kicked off. No, sad as that is.
That's disturbing.
And frankly, who hired this dude? He's too tall to be an elf. Have they not seen elves? There's photos. There's whatever.
So my thinking is that this was an easy way for him to belong to something, and of course have accolades and look, I'm somebody important in this community, and it's a psychological need. And well, I don't think it was anything nefarious, because I really think, you know, if it was for sexual reasons, that's really a stretch trying to get somebody, you know, well, come on to my house. As far as I've known, and then again, this has only lasted a month. I don't know how far this would have gone. But to me, the short term says everything says that he just needed to belong to something. He's a lonely guy. He's been ostracized, obviously. Now I'll talk about some of the disturbing things. Yes, the elf thing is very disturbing. The other disturbing thing is that in his one Facebook page, he has his ex-stepson, I believe, maybe even his grandson, his ex-grandson, because I believe it was actually on his second wife's family side. But he's holding up a fish on a line and he's got no shirt on. And see, to me, that's disturbing. Having a convicted child molester having a Facebook header page of a kid with no shirt on. That's disturbing.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to put that. And again, Mark writes, not sure why a child molester would bring the attention. Very simple, because he thinks he is. Put yourself in the mind of a person who's been in prison. Okay, he's been in the joint, and he's been a scofflaw all his life. He's gotten tickets for not having car insurance, having a suspended driver's license, getting sued 3, 4, 5 different times, and losing by not showing up to court, and then fleeing the state from Indiana to Colorado to circumvent those civil charges. To the fact is, he's still paying to this day, and they're 18 years old. Okay, so when you take a look at that kind of person, he thinks he's smarter than everybody else.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things going on here. One is that, in a lot of these cases, and, Steve, you and I have seen these before, that we've both looked into hoaxers of all different types and flavors and stuff. And there's a couple things. Number one is they assume, often correctly, unfortunately, that no one's going to bother to do the kind of work that you put into it. They assume that people are just going to be like, oh my God, that's why. Oh my God, that's crazy. Like, share, that's so cool. It's viral. It's this, it's that. And there's so little self-policing in cryptozoology in general. And this is something you and I have talked about. Yep. That a lot of times they assume that no one is going to bother to take the time and effort, because this does take time and effort. And I applaud you for digging into as much as you have. You dug in more than I would have. But again, so they just, it doesn't occur to them that anyone is going to bother to peel back the onion and say, what the hell is this?
Right.
And unfortunately, as I said, usually that's correct. Usually, the number of cases that you and I have definitively exposed as hoaxes compared to the number that you and I know damn well are hoaxes, but we just haven't bothered to put in the time and the effort to expose because it's bullshit anyway. So that's part of it is that they like, again, they think they're smarter than everybody else. They think that no one's going to bother to dig into it. And certainly not to the degree that you did.
Yep.
And when people talk about the motivation, I thought a lot about this, because a lot of times when someone comes up to me and I think that there's probably a hoaxed video of a lake monster, Bigfoot, whatever else. And one retort I often hear is, well, that doesn't make sense. Why would someone do that? And I'm like, why would someone do that? And it's interesting,
right, yeah.
is because just to be clear, people do things for any reason or no reason at all. And it's like the notion that if you yourself can't think of a good reason why you would do that, well, then no one else would do that, is complete garbage. Because people make up stories. There are people that have faked. There are people that have pretended to be in the Holocaust. They're fake 9/11 survivors. People fabricate stuff all the time for no reason. So just because you can't think of a reason, or just because you personally can't conceive of yourself doing that, means nothing, because you're not in their shoes.
Right.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I mean, look at that woman that faked the whole 9/11 thing. She was from Spain.
Yeah.
Spoke perfect English, said she was in the building, lost a fiance, actually had pictures taken with her and the governor at the time, George Pataki, and Rudy Giuliani, as part, and created this big 9/11 survivors group and became president of it. And it turned out her story was all a fraud.
It's a bizarre story. I know the exact one you're talking about. And it's,
wow.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. And again, the idea that somebody wouldn't do that, it's like, no, there's like there doesn't have to be a reason. People make stuff up for no reason, and it just
and people don't understand that, you know, I'll be on a retail theft detail, and you know, we'll be sitting there waiting for these crews to come in, and we'll end up catching, hey, look at this woman over here, and she's stealing $300, $400, $500 worth of makeup. And, you know, we pull her in, we search her, and she's got a couple $100 on her. You know, well, why are you doing that? Well, I don't know. It was small, and I figured I can get away with it. And that's the mentality of some people. There is a flaw in people's morality in some certain circumstances, and they say, hey, let me just see what, you know, if I can get away with it. I mean, look at, if you look at the history of this guy, as I have, in 2002, he gets sued. Him and his deceased wife get sued constantly. The sheriff department, and I'm looking at the docket, sheriff department confirms, you know, submitted affidavit that they served them. Court comes, they don't show up. They serve them again. Court comes, they don't show up. The next time they serve them, they post the papers on their address, sent the certified letters, and the letters got returned, refused. Court comes, they don't show up. So then the sheriff's department goes out there and they moved. Where did they move to? They moved, you know, cross country to another state. Figure it's not going to catch up to them there.
Yeah.
You know, why is he constantly being ticketed at that same particular period of time for not having car insurance, driving on a suspended license? You know, it's just a disregard for rules.
It is, but I think that you hit on an important part a little bit earlier about his background as a felon sex offender, and I don't want to read too much into it because I mean there's all sorts of, you know,
right.
But I think there's some truth to that, in that, and again, you know, we've all seen this who've been in the community for a while, is that particularly with monster sightings and Bigfoot sightings, there's an identity, right? You're the person that took this photo, you know, and you also see this, for example, in the UFO community, where, you know, you're the guy that, you know, you're the
contactee. Yep.
You're the contactee, right? Sandra Mancy is the person that took the photo of Champ, the Champ Lake monster, you know. So and there's this community, and it's people who are like, oh my God, you're amazing. And, you know, and for a lot of these people, particularly, as you know, with Bigfoot, a lot of times these people, that they feel, if they're not hoaxing, and of course, as we're seeing, there are many hoaxers, but even those who just have some misidentification, they feel special. They feel like, you know, here's this elusive creature that's out there and it's hardly ever seen, very rarely, but I was chosen. Like, you know, how did I happen to be there? And it turned and it looked at me, and I felt like the world opened up, and it was this beautiful moment of wisdom and peace and all these sorts of things. And so there's this identity where people either genuinely or sort of putting it on have this generated identity of specialness. And it's like, you know, and I can see how somebody, again, he's this guy, he's, you know, let's face it, he's had a bad life. He's kind of a loser, you know, in and out of trouble, this and that and the other. I can see how he might say, well, hell, I mean, you know, let me just fake this Bigfoot thing, and people will, you know, I'll get some attention and people talking to me, and I'm sure nobody like Steve's going to look into it.
Well, exactly. Yeah, they don't anticipate what's happening, and the funny thing is here. I mean, I wrote this blog January. Actually, this is a couple of months before. This guy's name wasn't even on the radar back then, and I talk about all this stuff. The timelines don't add up. Names and people are problematic. Yeah. Again, you know, if you take this guide and put it on this, you can see all the points. It has the trappings of authenticity. So it's you know, it falls apart when you focus on the details. And then I look at motives, and I talk about the psychological needy hoaxer, one who hoaxes due to a recent psychological event in their life, such as divorce, or it could be being ostracized because you're a sex offender.
Yeah.
It was, and I got thinking about that. That's why, when people asked me originally, I'm really not sure. I got to think about this. I maybe it's nefarious, and that's why I got the information out as quick as I did, because, hey, this guy, he's got a sex offender record and he's being dishonest. And that, when a felon becomes dishonest about something, it sends up major flags to me as an investigator. So then I got thinking about it, and I started just reading through my stuff, and I said, well, this doesn't seem like a prank or a joke, because this is definitely not something for humor or enjoyment. He's not profiting on it. Otherwise, it would have came out in a whole different scope.
Well, he may be profiting on it insofar as he's enjoying the attention. He's enjoying following people, commenting on it, and defending him, and back and forth, and that. But that's a yeah.
It all comes back to the needy thing.
Exactly.
They need to feel special or have special abilities to a particular class of people, and to feel superior within that class. And again, these are folks who we see constantly on Facebook Live espousing their abilities, special abilities to communicate. In this case, it was a picture. So I really think that that was the case in this. So Mark Decker is asked about the pictures. Now, what do I think the pictures are? He says, well, what is it? Let's pull this one up. That's probably, hang on, folks. It's gonna take me a second. I gotta slide it over here. And we'll get that increase there. Now, some people ask me, I talked about the bands and stuff like that, but I see that as video degradation due to the fact that he's shooting a screen with a camera. So I'm really not, because it seems to extend, straight across like that, but it seems to extend into, so these bands are that. And is there a screen here? Yeah, I would say there's a screen. What are we looking at? We're looking at a mask. And why are we only looking at that mask from the nose up? Somebody had also pointed out to me that one picture, it looks like it may be photoshopped. I think it was this picture here that they thought may have been photoshopped. That one's coming up over. Yeah, this is the one. And he said, well, he thought it was photoshopped because of the position of the nose. And it's a good point too. The nose seems to actually cusp or be like almost like it's laying on top of the. Now, if there was a screen there, that wouldn't be possible.
Right.
So is it photoshopped? It could be.
But it would be easier to just not. I mean, it'd be easier just to have a practical guy wearing a mask. Yeah. I mean, that's.
And that could be. This could be nothing but, again, this could also be photographic noise too, to make it look like it is.
Right.
Because I've seen. I've yeah, exactly.
Well,
Video taking photos, leave the lines. Yep, exactly.
That's the thing. He's been slick about taking a picture of a picture, so you can only analyze the photo that he took of the photo.
But I really don't think that. Other than the timeline, and he only posted it on social media. Of course not, because if you send an email, you get the properties and the metadata from those photographs.
Right.
I haven't even put these through an ELA test. There's no need to, because they're only available on Facebook. It's going to be all compressed, and it's not going to come out authentically anyway. The only reason why I was able to do that with the Todd Standing picture was because it was posted in the Calgary newspaper, and they had actually put his original sent photo on the webpage. When I clicked on it,
wow, you lucked out on that one.
It was it. The metadata was there, everything. But I don't think it's that smart. I don't think he's that smart, Chris, to say, oh, well, I'm doing this to circumvent any of this. I think in totality, how far do I think up that window is? 3 feet, 3.5 feet, whatever your standard window height is. Because you can see the house in the background, like he talks about. Well, I live by myself. You understand. Look at the claim. He says, "Oh, that's my house stands up 8 foot tall, and I'm building a house there. I live remotely. Then what the hell is that light back there? That is a patio light.
It's a big box of glowing feral cats that aren't his.
Yeah, I mean, so to me, it's not 8 foot.
Well, look, here's the other way to approach it, right?
Fred,
Is
Fred, hold on, Fred Canny's online here. He says from the ground to the window is 8 foot. Really? Prove it. Because then that window must be a second story window on a house
that doesn't angle.
Yeah, from that. Yeah. I mean, well, you think if that's 8 foot,
Well,
if that's 8 foot, that's got to be 16 feet. You know that because look, it's up. That's got to be high up. So the fact is,
oh no,
yeah. The
I don't
fact
think
is
so.
that is a standard window, 3.5, 4 foot tall tops, and that's the patio across the way. We can even see the reflection from the glass right here, very closely. I'm zoomed in as much as I can be, but there's a glow right in here for those who can't.
Yeah,
see
I do
it.
see it. Yeah,
There's a glow. That's a patio door, folks.
well, yeah, Steve. But now there's nothing else outside in all that dark that we could see to make sure that we could be a certain height off the ground. The one thing we can say is that structure is a one-story structure.
Correct.
So if the bottom ledge of his window is 8 feet off the ground, that means it's up at ceiling height in my room. Well, I think I've got 9 foot ceilings in here, but I don't think I could look out of a window that was 8 feet off the ground. Here's
another angle. Here's another angle.
Mm.
This was the first one that I put up on the website.
Yeah.
There's your patio right there.
right.
That's your reflection right there. So this line may actually be off, and the other one I put it more to the point because the creature was standing there, the light was off to there. So my guess is that the way they were shooting is either this way or a little bit that way. But whatever the case, in the window I actually think is right here. Here's his patio right here. So he walks out in the patio door. There's the living room, and he's shooting. That's what we're looking at there.
The other photo, the earlier photo you showed, Steve, showed the street view shows a single-story structure. So if it's a single-story structure, it's impossible to have a windowsill at 8 feet off the ground.
So Fred said, I'm just going on by what he said. I don't know, Fred, if you came in late, but whatever he said, we've destroyed.
That ship has sailed, my friend. Steve, he stomped on it. He's burned it. He's flung it around a little bit. There's now a dog chewing on what's left of his story.
Yeah, there definitely was. So whatever his story was definitely not. Now we're just trying to figure out how the pictures were done. And my guess is, the reflectivity too is very high. It's almost got like this sheen. And, I almost see now, if you think about the natural brows of primates, they don't have bumps, but masks do. They always put those little bumpy things in there. And even in this picture, you can see bump, almost like, so I think that's what's going on here. I mean, Fred, we're actually looking at Fred, in case you're new to the party, the house you're seeing on the right is actually what Yeoman's residence really is. Obviously nowhere near that
Bailey, Colorado, in the boonies.
Yeah. And like I said, we have found other profiles too that prove that he is actually not Scott Yeoman, but he is actually Jonathan Yeoman.
Jonathan Scott Yeoman.
Scott Yeoman is actually his name.
Yeah.
We found those.
And the other thing I want to bring up is of course that if that story was true, if there really was an unknown 8 foot tall creature standing out his window, there's a couple other angles to it. Number one is that where's the footprints, right? A creature that's that big is going to leave. I mean, I'm 230 pounds, 240 pound man. I leave footprints in there. Let me tell you, that thing is going to leave tracks outside the window and elsewhere. So my question is, where's the photos of this? Where's the foliage? Where's the disturbed shrub? This and that. And the other thing and I think it was Mark Decker. I think he pointed this out a little bit earlier, and I want to come back to it quickly. Is the length of the sighting? And this as some of you may know, one of my big investigations was into the Sandra Mancy lake monster sighting of Champ. I did a lot of research into lake monsters, and Champ's sighting. She's the one that took the famous 1977 published in 81 photograph of Champ, the lake monster. Huh. And one thing that really struck me when I interviewed Sandra Mancy, who sadly died last year, was she talked about how long the sighting lasted, and she said it lasted between 3 and 7 minutes. 3 and 7 minutes for a lake monster's head to be, up out of the water looking around. And in this case, again, he's like, since when is a Bigfoot standing there for 8 minutes?
Yeah. Or 10 minutes
or 10 or who the hell knows, right? I mean,
that's the interesting thing. Matt Rudy said 10 minutes, but again, the story goes, his wife came in at 8 minutes.
Right.
And she made this exclamation and ran out of the room, and he got his gun. So is it 8 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? Is it 20 minutes, like he said on a Facebook post?
And how often do you even hear? How often do you hear Bigfoot reports that last more than glimpses? I mean, there are a few of them, but most of them, if these creatures are lurking around and they don't mind being seen and obviously noticed for 8, 10, 20 minutes, then we should be seeing them everywhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, and regardless of what you think, Ben, because I know you're the skeptic and you got to play that way. I've had 2 sightings, and my first sighting I considered very long. It was maybe 40 to 45 seconds, may have been 30.
Right.
At that point, I don't have that frame of reference, but it kind of looked back at me. I looked back at it. I think I had a light shining on it. I think it kind of was wondering if it was, it was postulating, being a primate. It was saying, does it see me? Am I going to move? I'm not going to move. And it kind of just froze, and I froze. And then the minute I moved that light, it juked and it went out, and off it went.
But here's the other thing, though.
The second one I had was like, pop, gone. It was not gone in 10 seconds. I got out of 10.
Right, but this is a really good example, right? Is because the way that human psychology works, and I have a background in psychology, been doing this a long time, as you have as well, is that it's like I was in a car accident about 12 years ago. And I remember getting hit by the car, and the whole thing seemed in slow motion.
Yep.
And I mean, I remember it wasn't in slow motion. I know that for a fact because the world didn't slow down. But I very clearly, and this is well known, everything was just in slow motion when the car spun around. And so there's this psychology angle where people will overestimate the length of their sightings just because of the psychological factors.
Sure.
But here's the difference between that sort of thing and this guy's video is it doesn't matter how long it was in his experience. If he's got 10 minutes of videotape, that's 10 minutes of videotape. It's not the videotape's experience. It's literally 10 minutes of videotape. So in theory, that's what we're talking about.
Right. And the other interesting thing is he's got 8 pictures in 10 minutes.
Right.
Yeah. And my guess is, and like I told folks, is that he probably took, of this video, he probably took 20 of them, 30 of them, and he probably eliminated most of them because they didn't look quite right. They look kind of fake. That's why we don't see the teeth in this at all. We never see the mouth. Why not? Why don't we see the neck, the shoulders? Because we know it just didn't sit there with its nose in the counter like that.
it's like Kilroy Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
The nose hanging over. It's like, come on, dude. It's like, and this is an important part of investigation. I'm glad you brought that up. Is when we're looking at these photos and these videos, the question isn't only what are we seeing, but what are we not seeing, right?
Exactly.
What should be there between frames A and D? Where's B and C?
Right, and what we see also, what I find interesting is, for the most part, we see this side by side type of movement. Now, people will say, "Well, that's what they do. They sway. They're swaying." I don't buy that. I the way his description is, I don't buy that. It moved to one side of the window, then it moved to the other. He never said it was swaying at all.
Well, there was Steve. I had a problem with those pictures anyway. As soon as I took a glimpse of them, I'm like, okay, I'm not in. I'm out of it. I'm out of that one. I'm not. That's fake. But there's a reason for that. But now this guy, no matter what he had to present as evidence, his character is completely and questionable. I mean, well, questionable is really putting it politely. This guy's I'm sorry, dude, you're a scumbag. If you're a child molester,
Well,
you know,
I'm gonna take a pass on
uh,
letting a background something, and let's face it, to be honest, that was 1992. That was 18 years ago.
it don't matter.
Well, I tend to agree with that because, sex offenders, unless they're going through a lot of therapy and stuff like that, they're not going to change. They're going to be predisposed to doing that type of thing. Now, I'm not going to, like I said, I don't want to pass judgment on the guy that way. That's not my job. My job is to see whether or not this picture is. Now, the fact that he is a sex offender gives us the motive of maybe why he did it.
Right.
And the fact that it debunks his possessing a gun, it
Right.
leans toward he's lying
Right.
towards not having a gun.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind that I mean, that totally honest, sincere, upright citizens can misperceive things and misunderstand things, and totally sketchy people can have legitimate sightings, right? Roger Patterson is a good example. Roger Patterson, if you've read up, he's a sketchy dude. I mean, whether or not he actually filmed a Bigfoot or not, he's a sketchy dude. It's incontrovertible that Roger Patterson was not an upstanding member of the community. Now, that doesn't mean that his film is faked, but it does mean that there's some sketchy there.
Right. And the way I look at it is, and the funny thing is, and I'm glad you brought up the PG film, because I always said they had a damn good story. It's kind of hard to break. I mean, you think about it, they provided film before the pictures, film after the subject. So to me, it had some authenticity, because one of the hallmarks of phony films is, number one, if you have a kid in a film and you're going, hey, let's look at this Bigfoot. Come here, let's look at this Bigfoot. Again, like I said, that's not psychologically, that's all wrong. But you have, okay, here's this creature, and then the camera shuts off. You have just a snippet. You have nothing before, nothing after. Years ago, I did a case where somebody had caught something in a picture standing behind him in LaSalle Falls, Wisconsin. And we approached the guy, and the guy went, well, yeah, I'll do whatever you need. He actually gave us, one of the guys close by, I actually gave him the GPS location of where this had occurred. And, excuse me, as I said, hey, can I get a picture? Because at the time it was a film camera. Can I get the index roll? He sent me the index roll. So I have all the pictures before, all the pictures after. Obviously this guy's not trying to hoax anything. He says, well, I didn't even know it was there, whatever. So my guy goes out there, comes back, gives me a report. And it turns out that the whole back wall was this black type of rock. And what it was the rock had fallen in just a paradolic effect, having what looked like it looked like, well, it does look like a Bigfoot, doesn't it?
Interesting.
But it turns out that, and in fact, my investigator that I sent out there didn't realize at the time. And I said, look at, and he went in the summertime, they were in the fall. So the pictures that this gentleman had, the leaves are off the trees. The pictures I had now, the leaves were still on the trees. So I had to take them side by side and go, look, there's black here, there's black there, there's black. And I took 5 different points.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, this is the rock that has fallen. You can see the rock from the cliff from your report that is on the ground there. And he's like, my God, you're right. So case closed. And I actually wrote the guy back, and the guy was like, well, he's like, whew. He goes, I hate to think that something was standing behind me this whole time. It kind of creeped him out. He goes, but I'm glad to know, and I'm glad that there's an answer, and we can close the chapter on that and move on from it.
Yeah, that reminds me. I'm sure the Anthony Wooldridge Yeti photograph. It was taken a long time ago, I think 60s or something, and it was taken in the Himalayas. And there was this hiker, Anthony Wooldridge, and there's a photograph that he took of what appeared to be a human, Yeti figure against snow. And he saw it from a far distance. He couldn't tell if it was moving or not. He thought it was moving, but he took a photograph of it. And it later turned out to be, the Wooldridge Yeti photo. And then later investigators went back and they found that it was actually just a rock outcropping that from that particular angle in the snow looked like a humanoid figure. And so, these things happen all the time. I mean, I'm not suggesting that's always the case, but it's absolutely demonstrably true that a lot of times when we're seeing these images and these faces and these humanoid figures, we're seeing this. You see this all the time, right? We get people sending us photos of of shadows in forest, right? I mean, I remember, I had just I remember being cornered at a Bigfoot conference by Beckyard, Johnny and Beckyard.
Oh,
Yeah, I got stories. He comes up to me and he's shoving this photograph of this blurry, inside of a forest thing. Yeah, they're perfect. There's the Wooldridge photo, and it's clearly he's saying, "Don't you see the Bigfoot?" I'm like, dude, it's trees, it's leaves, and he was just getting pissed at me because he thought I was being obstinate. And I'm like, I'm not being obstinate. This is in your head.
Yep.
Anyway, yes, there's the Wooldridge photo.
Yeah, this is one thing I love about this system is that we can really quickly, if we talk about something, we can find a picture.
This is really cool. I love this system. I have to look into this.
Yeah. So yeah, it's all you need really is a second computer screen, and you can go to town, or a third computer. I have 3, so well, yeah, this is a really cool. But so yeah, Beckford was an interesting character. I remember him saying to me, "Well, there's been Sasquatch reports of a Sasquatch wearing human blue jeans and kind of a ripped shirt on the side of a road." I go, that wasn't. I go, Eric, that wasn't a Bigfoot. That was a hippie.
Yeah.
Remember that comment, Chris, from the old way?
Yeah.
I go, yeah, Eric, that wasn't a Bigfoot.
And of course, Eric, he was a big sort of Solomon Grundy looking Scooby-Doo villain, hulking, thick accented monster himself.
Weird.
Yeah.
Oh, I got some sound bites from that show to this day. We use every once in a while in our thing. Weird was one of them. Poop everywhere. Poop. That was another one of those. And
poop as far as I can see. Poop.
And then my favorite line: we can have an alternate universe where Tom Biscardi is honest.
That was a good one. Yeah.
I fell off my chair.
A stop clock.
I mean, Eric caused a lot of problems for a lot of people. I never had a problem with him, and I gotta say that for the most part, Eric believed what he was saying. So it's like I can't argue. I can't fault him for that. I never fault anybody if they truly believe what they believe in, even if it's the most ridiculous thing in the world. I mean, they're entitled to believe it. No.
The problem with Eric was that he would get pissed if you didn't believe it.
Oh, yeah.
Like I'd be like, he's like, look at this photo I took of like leaves in a tree, and I'm like,
yep.
What? He's like, if you just look close enough, you'll see the baby Bigfoot, and then the mama Bigfoot. I'm like, no, and he was just...
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Anyway,
yeah, he or the remember the Bigfoot Schwanz picture he had?
I forgot about
that. Yeah, you see this is a male Sasquatch, and then he put his little red circle on the right on there.
Well, keep him on the Skookum cast, right? Didn't the Skookum cast have like a nutsack print? If am I remembering that correctly?
I'm
pretty sure the BFRO Skookum cast, and it had turned out to be elk wallow, arguably, but it was because the idea was that Bigfoot had laid down in this mud wallow and reached over in some weird ass contorted way for a piece of fruit. And if that was a Bigfoot, which it wasn't, but if it was, then there was this area right between the legs that would be Eric's bread and butter.
Franks and beans.
Yes, I remember that now. Man, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chris
that
knows
was
what I'm talking about. All right.
a certain impressions of the texture.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess Bigfoot, he didn't manscape. I don't know, but it just it
Man.
looks sketchy to me.
Manscaping, the manscaping Sasquatch. His name is Daryl. So why do they call you Bigfoot?
Sorry, I had to mute out there for a second. Oh,
Yeah, my name is Daryl.
yeah. I've never been one to put very much credence into the skookum cast. That's an elk to me now. That's an elk wallow. It's the elk is laid down there and he's gotten up, and it's left some odd looking impressions in the ground, which could be perceived as, you can make anything you want to out of it. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I think it's pretty clearly an elk wallow. I mean, it's honestly, I'm a little disappointed that the people that were vouching for it haven't sort of acknowledged it. But I mean, that's on them.
And yeah, I know Esteban is a little skeptical of it. In talking with Dr. Meldrum years ago, I actually had a chance to talk to him at dinner one time about the Skookum cast, and he is more leaning towards it was a Sasquatch. And the reason why, and I didn't really think of that, is that when an elk gets up from resting, the first thing it does is it relieves itself, and they had found no droppings, and that was the basis of that. Now,
is that true though? I mean, is that yeah? Does that always happen?
I don't know. I don't follow elk around, so that's why I'm like, is it maybe just an odd case that one didn't? I mean, I'm sure it wouldn't be unheard of.
That would be more likely that the elk that got up just didn't relieve himself at that time, if that's the case. But we don't have elk in here in Kentucky, not that I'm aware of. Not that
or maybe the elk left in a hurry because of something.
Yeah.
It didn't relieve itself because it needed to get out of there quick too. So I don't know. I mean, the way I look at it is this way. I haven't really researched it. I wasn't there. So
yeah.
I'm just gonna put that one by the side and let people debate it, because I don't have enough, and I'm never afraid to say, people ask me like, I've got on talk shows, and all of a sudden they'll throw that, well, what's your belief on UFOs? What the hell does that have to do with it?
Right. Yeah, I get that too.
Well, and then my response to that would be, well, it'd be kind of stupid for me to say that we're the only thing in the universe, but that's not really not my field.
Right.
Not
related to the topic, but whatever.
Yeah.
The price of tea in China is, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we had a good long thread on the Skookum casts on over at Bigfoot forums. Matter of fact, I think they had one over at the Skeptic forums too.
My God, you know how many people how many people we've had to moderate on that one, Chris, when we were moderators over there?
But it was great. That had a lot of details, and that's where the manly impression is supposed to come from, the scrotum impression or whatever from the Skookum cast. And when I saw it, I can't see certain things, and a lot of people are of a different opinion. Yeah, some people were like, "Oh gosh, this has got to be where Bigfoot laid down and then got back up." And I'm like, well, no, I can kind of see where they were going. This looks like its heel was here, and this looks like a certain tendon. Okay, yeah, you could say that, but you could also say that could be from the foreleg of an elk. Excuse me.
Well, I mean, the thing that gets me, I don't want to get too off track on Skookum Cast unless you guys want to, but the thing that gets me is that you had this organization that were these people who were intelligent, smart people. I mean, I got respect for most people there, who were there. I mean, I really do. But they're out there for the express purpose of capturing evidence for Bigfoot. So they lay out this bait. And then the problem that I have is that when something takes the bait, whether that was a Bigfoot with an elk, whatever the hell it was, they don't have video of it. Why the hell are you putting out bait to bring in some animal, and that if something does get it, you still don't know what the hell it is?
Right.
I mean, come
That's
on.
the problem. You're right. That's the problem.
Anyway, rant over.
But now, the Skookum cast, I think it's one of those things where anybody can make out of it what they want.
Yeah.
And, I was not there. I was not present. And so I don't know. From what I understand, there wasn't any other evidence presented as far as tracks and stuff. I mean, and
Nope.
this is kind of that would be something I would expect to see. But now it has been several years since I visited that. But now I don't believe there were any Bigfoot tracks located around the
I don't think there were either. And I mean, and I when that thing first came out, I tried to take a look at it, and I asked Matt Moneymaker, and he refused me access to the Skookum cast. And that's his right. I mean, it's his cast, but I was like, well, why don't you want the skeptics to look at it? This is, that's how science works, is you have people who don't necessarily agree with your interpretation looking at this. But I'm like, all right, fine. But it's like, what do you have to hide? Right. What are you afraid of that I'm going to find? But anyway, it is what it is.
One of the things, there's a conversation going on about speech in Bigfoot. And the propensity for people believing that Sasquatch speak like a Native American language or English or some other language. And if you read probably this book is one of my go-to books that I read on stuff like this. It's called the Sasquatch Playbook. Oh, I can't see because it's and it was written by me. But I just want to put a little factoid to this, and I don't know, this you would kind of appreciate the title of this book. It's called the Sasquatch Playbook: A Believer Looking at the Sasquatch Mystery Through the Eyes of a Skeptic. And one of the things I talk about in that book is anthropocentrism. In language, especially, is communicating where, according to Merriam-Webster, is interpreting or regarding the world in terms of human values and experiences, as well as considering human beings as the most significant entity of the universe. So therefore, what we're doing is, when we hear a Sasquatch babble, or you hear something that you believe is a Sasquatch, you're giving it human attributes as having language, or as having something, and you can speed them up, slow them down. It doesn't matter. It's going to be an auditory pareidolia to you.
Yeah, because that's the framework, that's the prism through which you're understanding it. So if you're assuming that aliens or Bigfoot or whatever else are like us inherently, then you're going to assume that whatever sounds are vocalizations or attempts to communicate or whatever else. And so I'm glad you brought that up, because it's important to recognize those frameworks and recognize when you're viewing all the evidence through those frameworks.
Right. And this is based back to an article written by Dr. Larry Zimmerman, and a very decent guy, talking about language. And he specifically covers some of the Bigfoot stuff. And he says we should be cautious about anthropocentrism, but symbolic communication is a defining characteristic to our species. Its development parallels many other of our evolutionary changes. So basically, what he's getting to in the article is that, if you look at audios like Sasquatch Ontario, and even in this, I kind of question the Sierra Sounds to some extent, is that a lot of folks say, well, geez, it sounds like a language. Well, that's our own anthropocentrism in there. Do we ever say that about a chimpanzee? Oh, listen, they sound like English. No, we don't, because we already had it ingrained in our brains. They don't speak English.
And the chimpanzees are clearly from Africa. Why would they be speaking English? Duh.
Or Swahili.
French.
All right, let's go Swahili.
Yeah.
Swahili. So yeah, we got to be very careful into not letting that happen with anything. It's like, and we say it all the time. Hey, the bear or the dog's playing peekaboo with me. Well, that peekaboo is a human attribute.
My favorite example, just to throw this in, is when I hear this all the time from my pet owner friends, and I'll have someone who will say, my cat thinks it's a dog. And it's kind of cute. I know what they mean, but I'm like, how could your cat possibly know what it's like to be a dog? And I just we're imposing our own assumptions about what a cat would think, how a dog would. It's just this sort of weird. Again, it's cute and it's funny, but it's like, no, your cat doesn't think it's a dog.
All right.
Well, here's a funny thing.
It's a canary, duh.
You got to hear this funny story though, and obviously it's not because the dog thinks he's a cat, but that's all he's learned from. When I got Watson as a pup, all he had around him was a cat, 2 cats, and the one cat in particular would prowl around, get down low. You know how cats do the pounce crawl. Well, one day all of a sudden I look around the corner and there he is crawling on the floor, getting ready to pounce. He's imitating the cat because that's all he knows. That's all he's learned from. It was the funniest thing. So yeah, it makes kind of sense. Oh, he thinks he's a cat. No, really, it's all he knows.
He's mimicking whatever. If there was a giraffe nearby, he'd mimic the damn giraffe. But you don't have a giraffe around there.
Right. But that was the funniest thing because he'd go around the corner like, he'd chase the cat and he'd do the same thing. He'd get down real low and start moving really slow. I'm like, he's acting like the cat. But that's what it is. He's acting like the cat.
Right. He's not thinking he's a cat. He's acting like a cat. That's the distinction.
I'm still a dog. I'm just doing what the cat's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we have to look at it in that terms. I mean, if we see, the Sasquatch is peekabooing. Now that, again, that may be just an anthropological term for ourselves necessarily. Not that the Sasquatch is actually playing peekaboo, but we're referring to it because it makes sense to, okay, it's kind of
exactly
looking around the tree. And I think that's the, I've said that too. Whatever it is kind of peekabooing. It was a bear. And the bear's peekabooing at us, but that was a reference not that the bear is playing peekaboo, but
right. That's our framework. That's what we would call it. Right.
It's like the wild man or the bear man or the ape man back in the 1800s.
Peeking is I don't want to offend Ben here, but now peeking is a Bigfoot behavior that I think does exist, but I think they do it very quickly. I know, Ben, I'm discussing a creature that you don't believe exists. But
No. I've never said that Bigfoot doesn't exist.
There's one peeping now.
And there's evidence of Bigfoot right there. Look at that nose. That's clearly a Bigfoot nose. Oh, hold on.
But now I think that behavior is described, and but in this case, those pictures, I don't think that's a real Bigfoot.
Yeah, it just there's no reason to believe it after what's come out.
Right.
Well, Steve, I have to say you did an admirable job. You there ain't nothing left of that story, man. I mean, you went above and beyond, so good on you.
Oh, it'd be like, and as the final note to that, what has happened to Scott Yeoman? He has disappeared. He is not responding to anybody's queries anymore. He's just dropped off the map. I've actually seen his Facebook profile yesterday or a couple of days ago, and he's not made one mention of Bigfoot or anything about what I've said. No rebuttals, no nothing. And in truth, that's what happens with the majority of Bigfoot hoaxers. And I'll never forget the interstate video hoax. And I was writing the kid who took it. And every time can you tell me what happened? And then we get like 2 sentences. And after about 2 emails of trying that, I turn around and say to him, all right, why don't you just tell me why you faked this? And the next email, well, my friend and I were just bored. There you go. Thank you very much.
There you go. Why not? At least it's being honest.
Right. And unfortunately, I had blocked Mr. Yeoman, after the story came out because I didn't want to deal with any, cussing or anything like that. I did give him half a day to respond to my query. Why did you fake this? That was my question directly. Right. He never answered it. Don't know if he even saw it because he wasn't on my friends list, and Facebook has that kind of weird thing where if you're not friends with somebody, you send them a message, it kind of gets put in a separate folder that it's not very easily found on the messenger. I could try one of his email addresses because hey, guess what? When I do those checks, I get email addresses and phone numbers and all that stuff as well.
But what's he gonna say, right? I mean, he's not gonna. He wants it to go away. He's embarrassed by what you found, and he just wants it to go away. So there's no benefit to him answering a question. I think his X, Y, and Z.
Right.
He's just hoping everybody forgets about it.
And that the funny thing is, that's what happens with the majority of hoaxers. People don't understand that because we're used to the Rick Dyers of the world who pop up now and again. We're used to the Todd Standings that are always there. We're used to the Cat Hansons or the Linda Newton Perrys that are always there.
Right.
It's kind of funny because Cat Hansen actually lives in Connecticut. And I exposed that one a year and a half ago. Again, you have these people that create their own internet personalities that don't live where they say they live. And you can tell people that believe in their research and the people that don't. There are people that go on Facebook every now and again and talk about their Bigfoot research. Do I believe it all? No. Do I disagree? Do I agree with it all? No. But at least they're not trying to pull the wool over our eyes. Then you have the folks that are complete shams that create this little world around them. And Linda Newton Perry was horrible. I don't know if you're even familiar with her, Ben.
No, I've have you ever heard the name, but I don't know.
Have you ever heard something called the Miller document?
Vaguely.
It was kind of funny. She came up with a picture. Oh yeah, Darcy, you're actually correct. There are people that believe her, unfortunately. And if they just go to the website, they can see how over the years since 2009 his fake stuff consistently. One of the things I love to point out is, this is why I'm doing this is because there is a one particular thing I want to talk about before we leave tonight is, what makes people, just hang on to stuff. And this was, I'm going to pull this one over. This was a Linda Newton Perry. This is off the
I do remember that now.
Right.
That's right.
This picture turned out to be false.
That's right.
And she was claiming this was her ESP team. This is actually the photo she put up there. And then we found them. We actually found the guys, and we actually this picture
through
here,
ESP, or how did you do it?
Did you just no, somebody actually informed us. Somebody was doing homework and said, "Hey, and hello to Phil Poling out there." So when I if you look at this, she was saying this, but we got this tip off. So we knew some researchers that were actually at the Fort. These guys were from the Fort Worth Exchange. So we knew some Bigfoot researchers down there. They went down there and they took this picture of him. This is actually a picture they took of him in Texas, tending to the ox, which is known as Big Jake.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is the Bigfoot here, she called Big Clyde. And then if you think about it, this picture comes from a movie called The Legend of Sasquatch. It was a 1976 movie. It was a docudrama, based on some reality. One of their characters on the show was Hank Parshall.
Yeah.
And this guy is Hank Parchell.
Oh, full circle there.
So we got that. But then we look at some more of our stuff. Like this is one of the Shrew Lake gates. Keep saying there's stuff going on at Shrew Lake. You turn around, I found the original post. And it was a posting of a guy who actually walked up this gate and ended up getting lost and dying. That's the gate, but you can see how she puts Shrew Lake on the things.
Right.
Then we have these pictures here that she says, "Oh, these are Dale Saxton pictures." Boom, boom, boom. Here's all these pictures. But you notice, and it's hard to see in this shot, but right in here, there's a name on it, but it's been blurred out. Well, that's because they actually belong to somebody that was on photo pics. So this goes on for years. Manuel, this is another one where she posted this as a footprint in Oregon. It turned out it was on Tim Fasano's YouTube page. And that was a photo we found. So we keep on going on. And then we go into the Miller.
So she didn't give this up. I mean, this is the thing. Look, here's the thing. Here's the thing. If I don't hoax things because I have a reputation. I have to, I have to be credible. So, but if I did hoax something and I got busted for it, I would be mortified. I'd be like, okay, I'm one and done, man. I'm not going to do this again because Steve's going to be on my ass. I don't need this.
But you talk to her and talk to her little clique around her. Oh, that's Steve Kulls. He's maligning me. He's telling lies about me. Really, look at the evidence. This was like the Miller doc goes into how this Bigfoot was pulled out of a fire, and they looked at it and yada yada yada. They found inconsistencies with all that. She posts this here in regards to the body that they found on the Miller doc that was done. So this is kind of has the backstory of it. Well, these are the guys that found the body. Here they are, Lawrence Statton and Jerry Lustin. But then I find out that, and this is the actual story right here that she posted. And I actually found the article, and it's a couple of loggers, and one guy is named Buzzy Franklin. In fact, there was a Bigfooter, Barb Shoop, who knew Buzzy because he owned a diner. So the interesting thing is one of the whole site since day one has been dedicated to Dale Saxton. That was part of the ESP team, the Emery, Saxton, and Parchell team.
Yeah.
But when I pulled up this, which has pictures of Buzzy Franklin and that article, you go down here and it's Dale Saxton. This site dedicated.
Dun, 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 dun.
And there he is, a salmon fisherman.
Wow.
So, but yet people will still believe her. And that goes to my conversation about confirmation bias. Is it, I understand confirmation bias, but what the hell makes people see, like the whole Cat Hansen thing? When I exposed that picture of her Bigfoot was actually a picture of a baby gorilla turned sideways. What makes people keep believing them?
I think part of it is that we live in a culture where so much of it is determined, especially with social media, on likes and shares, right? And so we post something and we want to see how many likes it has and this and that. And one thing I found is that, and it's really interesting, I've seen this over the last few years, is that once people hit once people hit the like button, and if I later go in or someone else later goes in and sort of gently debunks or shows why the post is wrong, people will get defensive. And it's because they've already put on the psychological investment of liking it. So there could be there could be a topic that if you just come up to me cold and we just happen to, what do you think about this? We're just talking, whatever. And, if we're just talking about something and I don't really take a position, but I just give my opinion on it, and you give me your opinion, I'm more likely to change my opinion. But if you come up to me and say, give me your opinion about this, yes or no, A, B, C, or D. And once I psychologically lock myself into one of the choices, even if I don't give a shit what the choice is, even if I don't really care, I've then become invested in, well, I made that choice, I'm going to stick by it. And I think that's what happens with a lot of these cases, is that even if deep down they have some suspicions about it, it's become part of their identity, right? Because they've sort of put their reputation, for whatever that may be, on the line, right? Because they've gone on the record as defending, this bogus video or this sketchy person, whatever else. And so it's hard for people to admit that they got suckered. And so it's easier to just double down, even in the face of stuff like yours.
Yep. Yeah, there was another guy that I had exposed rather recently too, that came back from his Bigfoot expedition and posted, and he got dealt with pretty fast, which was kind of funny because some of the stuff comes up. I do find that for the most part these Facebook groups, their admins, when they see stuff like that, when my concern originally was this guy belonged to a couple of Facebook groups. He's lying. Obviously, he's lying about stuff, and he's a convicted sex offender. So I made mention to the admin. I said, "Now you can do what you want with it, but I'm just letting you know this is what I found out about one of our members here, and we need to, just for safety reason, I'm letting you know." They immediately bounced him. So and I'll give props to them for doing that because that it's a safety thing at that point in time, and they were all about it because a lot of Bigfoot groups are kid friendly areas, so you especially you want to keep a family oriented site, and you got this a guy who has a history, even though it may be 18 years ago, but now he's lying, and that supersedes everything when it comes to this. And my investigation was not based, well, the guy's lying because this is fake because he's a sex offender. No, not at all. I have to do my due diligence. He's lying because he never lived there. And whether or not he had a criminal record or not, it doesn't matter because I still would have had the same outcome sans the sex offender part. It still would have been like, well, this guy never lived there.
Right, but of course, as you pointed out, one of the keys was the weapon, right? And that was one of the interesting angles into it, right? It was because a lot of people wouldn't have put those two together,
right? And one of the angle, but even without that angle, the most underlying figure is he never lived there. And,
well, there's that, but
that's the biggest. You can prove it. Just go to the Park County Assessor's page, and I encourage anybody that wants to look at that part of the investigation. Now, I have not updated the blog because as of yesterday, I believed he was unmarried at the time of this. Turns out he was married, and like I said, that's fine. But it turns out that he even married. He lived in LaSalle, Wisconsin, and if you look at, I'm going to pull up one more thing. I just want to make sure I pull up the right one. If you pull up this, that's an old address. He lived in LaSalle, Wisconsin. Rather, LaSalle, Colorado.
Colorado.
Yeah. Colorado. So that matches with his the old record of being there. So yeah, there is no doubt that we had the right person. There is no doubt he never lived there. So that the sex offender registry actually helped prove that when he was actually married, that's where he lived. And we know from the picture he lives in there. And I'm trying to find the picture. There was so much I had going on between everything. Literally, I have a file, 3 folders full in the file.
Well, if he has a handgun of 40 caliber, I don't think he's supposed to have that, and I don't want him to have it. If he's not supposed to have it.
And so you look at all of those things, and without a doubt, this is a hoax. Not for the reasons of being a sex offender. That only solidified a couple of the aspects of it, where he lived when he was married, and the fact where he lives now. So huge. But anyway, we are at the 11 o'clock hour. And, yeah, that went by real quick, didn't it?
We spent the whole time talking about this case here, dude, and we didn't really get to do a really good interview with Ben.
Well, we'll probably have him on again.
Yeah, I'm around. Steve can find me. Happy to come back on sometime.
I mean, I particularly pulled Ben on this because he has such insight to the psychology of things, and that was like, oh, I got to have Ben on for this one because I need somebody to pick their brain and provide some insight, which he did wonderfully, and I appreciate it so much for coming on.
Well, thanks for inviting me, man. It's always great to talk to you guys.
And you never know, we may get in the field again together sometime.
Yeah. I want to have you on my podcast, Squaring the Strange. We'll have to have you on soon.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'd love to come on. So folks, obviously we are done here tonight, but again, thanks to Ben Radford for being on, and on behalf of everybody here at Squatch-D TV, I want to make sure everybody is in good shape and everybody's okay. We'll be here next Sunday night, 9 p.m. Eastern. You know the sites, they're all right there on the screen where we broadcast from. So again, on behalf of everybody here, I want to wish everybody healthy and safe week. Keep healthy, folks. Keep your social distancing. We'll get through this. It's almost over. We're at least we may be halfway through this. We may be a quarter of the way through this, but we're getting through it.
One way or the other, we'll get through it.
That's right. This is the United States. And when we go back to work, this country's going to spin up and everything will be just fine. I'm sure of it. So anyway, on behalf of everybody, have a great week. And of course, God bless. Keep on squatching. We'll catch you all here next week.
What are you reporting?
We got someone or something crawling around out here.
All I can remember is flipping the light on, and I see this creature, and I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind, the whole nine, this isn't a man.
Went to look forward, and there was a big black thing, is all I can call it, that was in midair going across the road in front of me.
And then this thing walks across the road, takes a turn towards us, and then leaps over a guardrail. And the whole time, the whole thing was shadowing us, right behind us, right outside of us. You could kind of see the thing moving through the woods.
There are thousands of perfect people whose word would be good on any other subject who describe getting a good look at an enormous hair-covered upright animal. And that is a fact.